Well, you can see we're over here on the engine. We've just fitted the rings and the pistons to the con rods, and so now it's time to continue on and put the, I'll just shift this thing and put the pistons in. Now what I like to do is I turn the crank until the throw of the crank is right down the bottom, which means the keyway is up. Now that position there is good for number 1 and number 4. Then when you come to do number 2 and number 3, you turn the crank 180 degrees, and that puts the number 2 and number 3 right down the bottom. I like them down the bottom because you can, it'll help line the con rod up as it goes down in, and it'll naturally, you don't have to move the crank to put the cap on. So first up, if we look at the bottom end of the rod here, I'll try and sit that there so I have a free hand, and we see the bottom of the con rod there, and you'll notice in here there's an oil hole. Now in the bottom of the big end cap there's no oil hole, but you can see a mark where one was, so no big deal. Now look, why I'm telling you that is you need to get some clean rag and wipe this dry in there. Then you need to wipe the back of your bearing, make sure it's clean as clean can be. Then you sit the bearing in. I usually sit level with this bottom end here, as close as I can get. And just push that in with your fingers like that. Now at this stage, have a look up the hole. Make sure that oil hole's lined up. If that's not lined up now, you're in strife. And the other reason I'm telling you is I've seen some kits where half of the bearings have the hole and the other half doesn't. So if you end up putting one without a hole up in here, you're going to buy yourself trouble. So on the other cap here, I just line him up close to the outside there and push him on. Now it's really important that that's all nice and clean. And I'll set that cap away for the moment, up in a nice tidy clean spot. And now this assembly lube we had earlier, I'm going to run some of that around the bearing. That's probably too much, but that's all right. It's not going to matter. Now I like to get the oil can with whatever oil you're going to run in your engine. And I like to drop some down on top of the crank. And then I do a good run around the ball. You can't have too much oil at this stage. Then we get the piston here, and the open part of the con rod and this groove in the piston go towards the cam, so they must go that way. So I'll kneel down here a bit. I haven't got a lot of room, but that's all right. And once we have that lined up, try and work out how it works so that when the piston goes down, everything will just line up nicely. Now, I have a little Lyle ring compressor. I've had this for years. I've had others, and I just like this one. So that's why I'm using it. So at this stage on the bottom ring, I can move that around and show you. And I'll probably put the bottom oil ring around there somewhere. Then with my ring compressor here, all I'm doing at this stage is doing that one ring. So we drop that down, and you do have trouble here sometimes, like I'm having now, and my little spaces here might hold this ring up, so we'll just see. yeah, it's sort of, I'll just pull that out again because with me talking I forgot to put oil all around everywhere. Too much talking, Lance. Oh, that feels better. Brothers, they're easy to put these rings, but anyway, I'll try and, I might try and find my other ring compressor. I don't know where it is even. I use it that little. Now make sure your ring gap is where you want it to be. What are we looking like there? Look, that's okay, that's good. Now if we remember where we put that other groove, we can put this next oil ring with the groove facing that way. Now this next one here, I'd like to start at the top now. So we'll start one there, 180 apart. And the next one comes around to there. That's how I'm doing it anyway. So we should have plenty of oil around there, I believe. Now once again, we put the ring compressor on. We try not to move where those rings were. We may have trouble with this because of the ring compressor and the rings are narrower than the gap, I believe. My washers are in the road here, but I don't want to actually shift them. These ones over the back are okay. It's mainly this fella here. I might loosen him off just to do this job. Ideally, you want the ring compressor to sit even on the top of the block. That will be better. Check our ring gaps again, make sure we haven't moved them. Yep. Yeah, have a look around the back here. I just got to get rid of this one. If I had the old type ring compressor, I'd probably be better, but I do have one, but I have no idea where it is because I use this one all the time. Is that looking good? That is looking good, Lance. So a bit of a fiddle. If you got to bash that to get it in, there's something not right. A bit of rubbish there. I don't know where that came from, but we'll get rid of it right now. whatever you do, if you've got the liner loose like I have here, do not turn it. Bring this right away for the next one. Okay, that was a bit of a fiddle, but I probably should have been a bit more organised with my washers here. I had these in too close, or else it would have just slid in. So now we can just come down with the piston and reach in underneath. And I'm not going to reset the camera up for all of this, it's just a hassle to do. And I'll try and... We have to line that conrod up. With all my mucking around, I've gone sideways a little bit. So I'll try and hop in under, around everything. Okay, I think we should be right there. Right, so that's got the crank right down as far as we can go with the cap on. Now I might wipe this out again. And I'll run a bead of oil around. Then with the bearing cap here, that's our bearing cap. I'll put a bit of the good grease on that again. Now the numbers, we've got to make sure we line the numbers up on the crank. So look, I'll put this on. I'm not going to set the camera up underneath again. By the time I get that out, and I've got no front end now, so I've got to have support under the engine. I'll do these up. Now, the tension for these conrod bolts is 42 to 46 foot-pounds. So what the idea is I usually actually put a dab of oil on them too. And the tension is 42 to 46 foot-pounds. I usually go 45. And once I've done that, I turn the crank a little bit back and forth. That's why it's very important to make sure these are locked in. I turn the crank back and forth. I may go around one full turn even. And what I'm looking at then is that this bearing's not tight. There's no binding. You know everything's okay. So then I'll do the next one and do the same. Now, the reason I do that is if you put all four in and then you get to turn the engine, oh shit, it's locked up. You've got no clue where to look. You've got to pull the whole engine apart again and have a look. So make sure the liners are clamped firmly. Turn it as little as you possibly can, but once we've got the cap on, we'll do one revolution just to make sure it's gone up and back correctly, and then we'll be ready to put number 4 in. So I've showed you the rigmarole to putting one in. I won't show you the lot, but we'll probably come back once they're all in, and I'll just show you the line, you know, how high it is in the liner and all that. Before we put the cam followers, or the cam followers and all that back in. Okay, here we are under the engine, and I wasn't going to bug around with this, but I thought, oh, what's the point? Doesn't matter, does it? A bit more work. And look, what I'm showing you there, without getting oil dripped on the camera if I can, is up in here I've tensioned the con rod down, and you'll notice the tags are not folded over yet, and there's a reason for that. If you remember before, I said about turning the engine over just to make sure everything's clear and everything's okay. So if you'd lock those tags over, you turn it over and there's something wrong, well, you've got to ruin those new tags. So if you turn the engine over, and you can see the crank running there, and look, that's lovely. I always try and go in the direction of rotation, and look, that's as good as I'd expect to see, so that's okay. I'll shift the camera now, we'll put the camera up the top, and I'll just show you, and drop my spanner on the floor there, and I'll show you what it looks like from the top. And from the top, as we turn it over, now this is why you have to make sure these liners are clamped in properly. Now when we turn the engine over, you can see the piston coming up, and that's the top there. That is just under the flange of the liner there. So as the head's flat and it's got a combustion chamber in it, that can't be above. So that's fine. So we'll roll that right down to the bottom once more. So that means the crankshaft pulley key, and if I swing down there I can show you that. So it means this key is in the straight up position. So when this key is in the straight up position, number 1 and number 4 are in bottom dead centre. Now if we turn this engine over and we just go 180 degrees and put that on the bottom, there we go, the piston's up the top. So that's handy to know later when we're looking to set top dead centre. Sometimes you can set top dead centre, easy for me to say, with the head on. So if you know straight up and down is top dead centre on number 1 piston, that's a good thing. So there you go. That's putting a piston in. I'll get the rest in and we'll move on from there. Well, there you go. The shed's starting to crackle and groan for the day, but that's okay. And I'll just give this a wind over here for you. And you can see all the pistons are all fitted now. They're all tensioned up. While I was under there, I just run the tension wrench over the main bearing caps, just because they were there. So this is looking good. I'll cover this up for the moment, and I believe the next item to go onto the engine will be the camshaft, so we can drop the cam followers in here and we can have a bit of a look what's going on there. So that's it. That's fitting the piston assemblies into the block.